The MSFS congregation had more than 50 years of presence in Anekal Taluk of Bangalore South District. This area is occupied with Dalits and the poor. After many requests from the parents to begin a college to cater to their children, the Southwest India province of MSFS congregation decided to start a college here. St. Francis de Sales College was begun in 2004 with the motto Excellence, Transformation and Efficiency to cater to the poor, the marginalized and downtrodden in this taluk. The college has passed through more than a decade of its existence with excellence beyond imagination. It is A-graded by NEP and is affiliated to Bangalore University, one of the largest state universities in India.
This light cafeteria with food and snacks to keep the energy levels high all through the day also acts as a lovely place to chill out with friends. A number of large halls like the seminar halls and the conference rooms for organizing seminars and workshops, and an open auditorium that can contain over 3,000 people. Sports is an area that is given great encouragement at our college, with facilities like the basketball, the volleyball, the football, baseball and the softball courts, along with a shooting range. And this is complemented with a state-of-the-art gymnasium to keep you fit and fine. You feel like getting closer to nature as well as relaxing your mind? Then we have a beautiful birds park to comfort you with peace and serenity. Knowledge is power is a quote that we strongly believe in, and this is boosted with the presence of a library covering various disciplines and subjects with many national and international journals as well as magazines. Technology is also well tapped in our college with an e-library that gives access to thousands of e-books and journals, as well as having projectors and visual aids in classrooms to facilitate learning. Nation building is a strong value we believe in, and this is promoted with a well-disciplined unit of the NCC, the NSS and the Civil Defense Cadets. Yes, we at SFS also ease your financial transactions by having a nationalized bank within our campus. With an early to start and better to perform slogan, we have our college timings from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. thus also helping many of our students to take up part-time jobs and thus promoting the concept of earn and learn. With many reputed companies visiting our college, we also ensure placements for our students right after the completion of their course.
The college is now heading towards becoming a research center as well as towards becoming an autonomous college. Come, Experience your youthful days in this mini heaven in the hub of electronic city, the Silicon Valley of India. Welcome to all.
That was St. Francis de Sales College, Bangalore. Very good afternoon to everyone. And as we move on to our session today, being the last day, we would be having a wonderful session today as well. Before we move on, we would like to look into our instructions. Kindly mute your microphones and switch off your videos for better quality. You can raise your questions in the chat box, and this will be taken to the speaker. Being progressive requires the ability to think beyond the impossible and outside the obvious. A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to day 6 of the FDP, Integrated Learning and the NEP 2020, organized by the IQAC, St. Francis de Sales College, Bangalore. The last 5 days were loaded with brilliant sessions that have definitely triggered our minds to a greater extent and has made us think beyond the obvious. We have now reached the final day, day 6 of our FDP. We would like to welcome everyone to session 8. A special note of welcome and appreciation to Dr. Bhargavi from Seshadripuram College, Bangalore, for having accepted our invitation and being here this afternoon to address us on the respective topic. We'd also like to welcome Dr. Vital Pothar. Thank you, sir, for joining in for our day 6. Once again, on behalf of St. Francis de Sales College, we render a hearty welcome to everyone. As we continue, let us invoke the blessings of God by our short prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Well, as we move into our technical session for the day, we are definitely glad to have with us this afternoon Dr. Bhargavi, Professor and Director, Postgraduate Department of Commerce, Seshadripuram College, to handle this afternoon's session. I now request Professor Ramandeep to introduce our speaker for the afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Bhargavi VR is an academician with over 15 years of experience in the field of higher education. She is currently the Professor and Director, Seshadripuram College Postgraduate Department, Bangalore. She also heads the Center for Global Excellence and has been instrumental in partnering with various institutions and universities across the globe. She has spearheaded in establishing the Institute of Productivity UK Bangalore Center and Center for Social Productivity, the first of its kind in the country. She has, to her credit, over 11 certifications ranging from innovation and productivity from UK to business analytics and French. Dr. Bhargavi has presented more than 31 papers in international conferences and 20 papers in national level conferences. She has, to her credit, 14 paper publications and has authored 13 books. She has delivered more than 30 invited talks to students, faculty, parents, and corporates in various national and international platforms. She has rendered academic service in varied capacities as custodian, member board of examiner, and board of studies, paper setter in various colleges and universities. Dr. Bhargavi has professional affiliation with National Human Resource Development Network, MTC Global, Gandhi Peace Foundation, United Religion Initiative, USA, and was also the member Society for Human Resource Management, USA. She is Rotarian, contributing in the space of community engagement and has held several positions. She is passionate about metaphysics and is a Reiki master and software martial art practitioner. Dr. Bhargavi is the recipient of prestigious Fellow of the World Academy of the Productivity Science, Canada. I welcome you, ma'am. I request you to take over the session. Over to ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramandeep. A very warm good afternoon to all of you. At the outset, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the organizing committee, Reverend Father Dr. Roy P.K., Reverend Father Jijo Jose, the Vice Principal, Professor Maya Matthew, IQAC Coordinator, and all the other team members who've been coordinating with me in putting up this entire event for an entire week. So thank you so much for having me with you guys here this afternoon. It's truly an honor and privilege to be here with all of you. Let me quickly share my screen with all of you. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am. It's loading at the moment. Yes, it's visible, ma'am.
All right. Now the full screen is visible?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you so much, and glad to meet all of you virtually on this weekend afternoon. So I promise you that I'm not going to take you through about 120 minutes. I don't think you should be scared about it. So quickly, I will just put the concepts in front of you for about 45 minutes, followed by keeping the floor open for questions and answers. Now, even before we get started with what exactly is this concept of outcome-based education, how it functions, what are exactly its components, and so on and so forth, can I quickly ask the audience here, how many of you are practicing outcome-based education in your institutions? Either you can quickly unmute yourself and say a yes, or put it in the chat box for me to understand.
So outcome-based education is basically like result-oriented education, right?
All right.
So to some extent, I have been practicing.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much. So I see few answers coming in the chat box. Okay, you're practicing. So I see there are a lot of faculty coming in from the St. Francis College. Okay, you're practicing in the college. Wonderful. All right, so I'm getting few quick responses from the audience that they have been practicing the outcome-based education. Now, since the title of the program says unboxing outcome-based education, it's very essential a number of times to understand how exactly this came into existence and what is the way forward and how do we make progress in this entire space. Now, if you look at the slide here and the pictures that you see on the slide on the left hand and the right hand side, this depicts how we have been living life about 5-6 decades ago, wherein there was absolutely no competition, there were no choices available in the market, nor in the space of education industry. And today, with too many choices and varied options around us, we see a maze in which we are all left through. Now, when you look into this maze that we are all navigating through in our day-to-day lives, over the decades, we've been noticing a big change around us globally. All of us have been witnessing living life in a VUCA world. As all of you know, the acronym VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Over the last 1 decade, we are noticing another change and another wave of transition that is happening in the space of industry across the entire globe. Along with this, diversity and disruption are the two important aspects which have taken over the entire global space. Be it any industry for that matter, we see the presence of a world which is having a feature of being highly volatile, highly complex, uncertain, ambiguous, totally disruptive, and becoming very, very diverse on a day-to-day basis. Now, this is the kind of world that all of us are existing in, where disruption has become the order of the day. And everything is happening on a blended and a hybrid model, which is the new normal that all of us are facing. Now, in this space of a de-VUCAD world, we are also witnessing certain gaps and challenges around us. There is everybody across the globe, as well as in India, who are constantly talking about what are the gaps, what are the areas where we are lacking and we need to buck up ourselves. Starting from the Confederation of Indian Industry report to the India Skills report, we hear a lot of things which are being shared with the entire community. For instance, the Indian workforce is estimated to increase by 2022 by 27%. That is, the next year, there is going to be an upsurge in the Indian workforce by about 27%. It means the number of people seeking for this employment will increase from 473 million to about 600 million. This is a report given by People Strong as well as Confederation of Indian Industry in the India Skills report. The other factor which all of us have to keep in mind is that less than 5% of the India's workforce is formally skilled, certified compared to the other countries across the globe, wherein it is about 96% in South Korea and 20% in China, 80% in Japan, 52% in the United States, 68% in the United Kingdom. And this is again a thought which has to be carefully given some time by all of us. There are several job positions which are going to be created in the future, will have a lot of demands for future skills. And we are yet to buck up and increase the speed of our skilling, reskilling, upskilling, and cross-skilling across the industry. And we are not up to the mark as per the report of the International Labour Organization. About 68.3% of the women graduates do not have paid jobs in our country, especially in the urban India. There are about 53% of Indian businesses were unable to hire our candidates due to lack of future skills. Now, as we are witnessing the growth of the emerging technologies, be it artificial intelligence to robotics, to bots, to automation, we are noticing an upsurge of demand in terms of skilling. Either you want to become an entrepreneur or you want to get into a job in an organization, get into the teaching fraternity. In all the spaces, the need of the hour is how skilled, how empowered, how we have built the capacity of our learners. Now, this is the kind of state that all of us are living in. Now, this I would like to call it as the watermelon effect. All of us have been in the current education industry. I'm sure the gathering here is a combination of people who are new to the education space. Some of them have over 5 years, and some of them could be seniors who have been working in the space of education for more than 10 years. A number of times we have experienced this as educators. We've had a lot of complaints about it. We've always had a juggle between outputs and outcomes, wherein our outputs look very green, look very fancy, and we feel that we are able to do the best. It could be in terms of getting 80%, 90%, or 100% results. But what we actually need to look for is the outcome. In the simple example that you see, there is a huge gap between the output and the outcome, even in the space of our education. And this is where we enter a new world, which I call it as the world 4.0, which is again converged with Industry 4.0, Education 4.0, as well as Educator 4.0. And mind you, errors are no surprise. We are all human beings. We are in the process of an evolution, even in the space of education. We tend to learn everything on a daily basis. There is scope for improvement on a daily basis. Now there is hope. There is a lot of hope in whatever actions that we are taking in our educational institutions. I would like the quote of Peter Drucker, which says the best way to predict the future is to create it. So here comes our role of you and me as educators, how we can transform ourselves from being fragile to becoming agile. How we can change and transform ourselves from being volatile to building a vision for our institutions. How we can explore this uncertainty and start understanding what is there in store for us tomorrow. Try to bend on these complexities and get the clarity so that we can move in the right direction. Try to resolve this ambiguity with agility and create that love for learning. And this kind of an agile mindset will help us and lead to implementing the concept of outcome-based education. Now, I have to say this. There are a number of people with different thoughts when it comes to the concept of outcome-based education. Any concept, any model, any approach that we see, not just in the space of education, anywhere for that matter, there are people with different thought processes towards it. There are few people who accept it and there are few people who have rejected it. Of course, there are a number of countries who have adopted this concept of outcome-based education. So being very optimistic in the approach, I am considering only the positive aspects of integrating the outcome-based education to our ecosystem in the institutions, trying to make it more systemic in the organization, in the institution, trying to internalize the concept of outcome-based education. I just thought it would be worthwhile to remember the phenomenal contribution made by this educationist and a sociologist, Mr. William Spady. Now, William was the person who brought in the concept of outcome-based education about 3 decades ago. Now, big thanks to him that he has contributed to a very great extent in refining the entire process of outcome-based education on different levels from time to time. No wonder he is called as the father of outcome-based education. And one of the profound statements made by William Spady is success for all learners. My dear teachers, as all of us know, success has no definition. And definitions are not definitive in nature. Success means different things to different people. It comes in different sizes and different shapes for everyone. And it is very difficult to measure the success of a child in an institution. You cannot just consider marks, ranks, placements, or a medal to define the success of a child. Now here comes the concept given by William Spady, and where he talks about shifting or having a transition from a very conventional system of education to outcome-based education. So William Spady basically says, whenever you are in an education system, there is a very strong need that you have clarity and you have a clear picture of what exactly you want your students to do. He says the first and foremost thing as an educator, as a dean, as a leader of your institution, build the clarity and understand what is it that you're expecting from your students. What is it that you want them to be able to do? Then the minute you are able to answer this primary question, then that leads you or gives you a way to understand and design your curriculum, your instructional pedagogy, your assessments, your evaluation. Your entire system can be designed based on the expectations that you have set in. And this will make sure that the learning for all your students ultimately happens. So basically, William focuses on what students can actually do after they are taught. It is not just the eternal struggle of remembering everything, the rote learning, and going to the examination hall and delivering it. Definitely no. So there comes the concept given by William Spaddy on the basics of what is outcome-based education all about. To have a very simple understanding, this concept came into existence because of the huge learning gaps that has been in existence from ages. From generation to generation, we've been noticing these gaps. Now, in the beginning, it was completely a teacher-centered approach. So whatever I know, I take the responsibility of transferring it to my students. We call that as an educentric paradigm. And in the meanwhile, there have been a number of educationists who have been thinking about how do we break this silos? How do we bring in this change? And there we see a paradigm shift happening to moving on to a student-centric approach, which we call it as an empowerment paradigm. Now, this paradigm basically focuses on changing, improving the hierarchy of learning. All of you will agree with me that basically in the classrooms, there is a pattern of teaching. What is that pattern of teaching? We tell the definition, meaning of the concept, need, importance, advantages, disadvantages, and the topic comes to a close. We are at a very, very basic level of defining inflation, deflation, what's a balance sheet, what's a profit and loss account. And that is basically a theoretical understanding of your concepts. Gone are the days if we got to bridge all these gaps, if we have to prepare our learners for a better future, this level of understanding is not sufficient. That has to be a ground, that has to be the foundation, but we need to start moving ahead to the further hierarchy of learning, which is called as the application competence. For instance, we all dictate the balance sheet to solve problems in the classroom. But in case I give the balance sheet of Reliance and I ask the children, could you please decipher this balance sheet for me? Unfortunately, the children will find it very difficult to understand what deciphering means. If I give them a statement and ask them to decipher it, they would find it very difficult. If I ask them what is happening to the GST status in the country, they would find it very difficult to answer the question because they are habituated to writing down the problem, solving the problem in the books. But they are unable to think how this can be applied in a real-time situation. Now, moving further, we are supposed to prepare our learners to build their own ability to think, which is called as reflection. So if we ask our student a question, do you think GST was a good decision for our country? The answer could be a yes or a no with some justification. Again, our children find it very difficult to answer this question of ours. They struggle to think and answer because they have never made an attempt, because what they've been doing all along is just make note of the problems, work them out, write it in the examination hall, and poor students, by the time they come to the final year, they would have forgotten what courses they have studied all along. Now, this happens because there is a huge disconnect between what has to be applied, thought, reflected critically is the missing component. Now, how do we empower our students in this progression? How do we bring in this hierarchy of learning? What is a modality? There has to be some kind of a modality in order to make this improvement. The answer is very simple. Start building and applying the concepts and principles of outcome-based education in our institutions. Now, before we start talking about what goes into the outcome-based education, let's basically have an understanding what was the mindset of William when he came up with outcome-based education. He says, come out of the thinking of silos. Do not have certain assumptions about children and do not have a compartmentalized thinking about you, your teaching, and your institution. So the first principle that William talks about outcome-based education is the clarity of focus. You have to know your direction. You should know what your expectations are. Build expanded opportunities to students. Do not break the opportunities. Do not limit the opportunities. Maybe if a child has done or submitted an assignment of poor quality, give him an opportunity to explore it in a different manner or explore it on a different space altogether. Build high expectations. A number of times, what I've personally noticed is we ourselves compromise on our expectations. We feel our children come from the rural area. They have poor communication. It's a judgment. It's a bias that I have. We always say these children always copy and paste an assignment. You give the topic and everybody submits the same. Why is it that we are not moving out of this kind of a fixed mindset and start moving towards a progressive mindset wherein we build high expectations from our students? It's only when we expect them to raise their contribution, I don't think progress can be seen. So setting high expectations and designing down. Generally, what do? We frame the syllabus and accordingly we start teaching and finally we derive at some kind of an outcome. No, this has to be vice versa. First, you should know what exactly your expectations are. You develop the direction, then start formulating your curriculum, then design your assessments and evaluations. So the entire outcome-based education is designed on these basic principles. Now, this is something which is very close to my heart, and I feel as teachers, you and me have to revisit this thought of learning. We have a big responsibility of trying to rejig this entire education system. I completely understand. You might be thinking, ma'am, it's not that easy as you say. It's very difficult practically. I completely understand, but it is possible. There is nothing that is impossible. If you could make a change in your class, you are a teacher leader in your own class. So you got to bring in this change on 4 levels. Learning to know, learning to live together, learning to do, and learning to be. And these have to be the 4 basic pillars of learning for all the children who come to our educational institutions. We are not just preparing them to get into the job market or, kickstart a startup. No, that is not our intention. We are looking at the holistic development of a child who walks into our institution. We need to look at these individual students who walk to us. I keep telling my staff this statement all the time. Don't look at them as an inquiry for admission. Look at the child as a bundle of dreams and aspirations who's coming to us. There's a lot of hope. There is faith that they have imposed on us and they are coming to our institution. So it makes our responsibility a moral accountability that we have to give them a holistic 360-degree development and prepare them for life. And keeping these 4 pillars of learning in mind, we need to work towards how we can focus on qualitative aspects as well as the quantitative aspects. Now, here we go with the outcome-based education framework. As all of you know, this is just for a clarity that I'm sharing this slide with all of you. You always have certain basic feedback or inputs that you have to receive, starting from designing of your curriculum, your value-added programs, your add-on programs, certificate programs. Wherever you need a curriculum, it is extremely essential, critical to receive inputs from various stakeholders. Be it the industry, be it the community, the dean, students, faculty, all these people are very important stakeholders of an institution. And the minute we start receiving this feedback, that becomes the foundation further to design and define what our expectations are. Now, when we have to define these expectations from our students, we have to keep one thing in mind. What exactly is the difference that you see between outcomes and outputs? We generally notice that when we talk about outputs, they are just the actions that we notice. Now, whenever you perform an action, you will notice that the outputs are just an action or items that contribute to achieving an outcome. So it means your outcome is very much a part, your output is very much a part of your outcome. And when we talk about the outcome specifically about an institution, it talks about what exactly you want your students to achieve. Now, in this expectation, the first and the foremost component is your vision and mission, followed by your program educational objectives, which we call it as PEOs, followed by the program objectives, your course outcomes. Again here, when we are talking about these 4 important components for measuring the outcomes, when we talk about a course, we are talking about a subject which is taught inside the classroom. When we talk about a program, it could be an engineering program, an MBA program, MIB, BCA, the programs which are offered in an educational institution, followed by the program educational objectives. So this is a broader understanding of what is it that you expect from a graduate of your institution. Now, to achieve these various outcomes which are defined by your institution, there has to be a lot of activities that happen in between. Starting from your course planning to teaching, to learning, to pedagogy, to instructional designing, to lesson planning, to blended learning, to understanding your assessments and evaluations, assessments being done at different levels, student level, course level, program level, departmental level, and the institution as a whole. Now, constantly we have to keep measuring our progress in the institution. Now, with this constant measurement comes continuous improvement in the institution. Now, let's look into these components individually. Now, in order to measure these outcomes in an institution, we have to keep in mind these important aspects. First and foremost, the university gives us the graduate attributes, followed by the vision mission, the PEOs, PO, CO. Once they are measured, we have to map the PEO along with the mission of the institution, followed by the course outcome and the program outcome mapping and how to manage the closing of the entire loop. Now, when we talk about the concept of graduate attributes, now it is very essential that we have clarity about the terminologies which we are using in the entire process of outcome-based education. Now, every educational institution, be it a state university or a private university or a deemed to be university, they come up with the graduate attributes. So what exactly are they? These institutions will have a framework of expectations in terms of skills, personal qualities, and understanding to be developed through the education journey when you are a part of this institution, and how well you are being prepared for your later life success. Now, this entire understanding on different levels, not just in terms of your career, in terms of your professional growth and development, but also building your personal qualities and preparing for having and leading a good life. So in short, we can say the later life success of individuals. So this is what the graduate attributes focus on. So here is a small example of how the graduate attributes look like. Of course, every institution tries to define its graduate attributes depending on the nature of programs that they are offering. Now here is an example of the University of Glasgow, where you see a number of attributes identified along 3 dimensions when they have set in the expectations from their learners. The first being the academic dimension, the personal dimension, and the transferable dimension. So this is just for an understanding of how graduate attributes have to be defined in a university setup. Moving on to the program educational objectives, the PEOs. I'm sure many of you would be knowing it. Intentionally, I have added the meaning. Generally in my slides, I don't use so much of content. Keeping in mind the new faculty who have just entered the industry, and for their benefit, I have added this. There could be a number of faculty who have just entered the industry and they are unaware of these terminologies. For their benefit, I have added this. I think the mid-career professionals and the senior faculty will have to bear with me for the next 2 to 3 minutes because I'm going back to the foundation again. So program educational objectives basically tell you the focus of your career and professional achievements that you are expecting from the programs that you're offering in your institution, and what is it that you are expecting from your graduate within the first few years of their graduation. Now, let us say when an engineer or an MBA grad moves out of the college in the next 3 to 5 years of time, what is this graduate of our institution able to achieve in his or her career and professional achievements? So this happens on a broader picture, which is called as program educational objectives. I've given a couple of examples for an easy understanding. Graduates will demonstrate commitment towards sustainable development for the betterment of society. Now, we have to keep in mind one thing. I have given these examples because most of the time, what I have noticed in institutions is they lose the connection between the program educational objectives and the mission statement of the institution. So there has to be a sync between these two aspects. It means when we are defining our program educational objectives, they have to be inconsistent or in sync with the mission of our institution. It could be in terms of your core competencies and professionalism and ethics and environment, sustainable development, lifelong learning. You can cover any of the aspects. It could be about diversity, inclusion, equity, equality. It all completely depends on what is the mission of your institution. And it is very essential. A number of times when we are defining the PEOs in the institution, it is just the IQAC team along with the dean and the principal and the faculty, we can't try to define them. I've personally noticed out of my experience, the defining of our PEOs will completely change when we develop a different global outlook. And that kind of a varied outlook, global outlook, has to be integrated. But how do we do this? Involve, invite people, network with people, invite different stakeholders, call your alumni. They are your brand ambassadors. They will tell you what they learned, what was expected. They will tell you the gap. They will tell you what has to be tweaked and changed in the institution. Go back to your management. Make your management a part of your defining of PEOs. Get in touch with the professional bodies. Be in touch with ICAI, NHRDN, SHRM, PMI. You have a number of professional bodies, maybe the Indian Institute of Materials Management for logistics, NHRDN for HR. So you have professional bodies who will be happy to help you in this entire process. Starting from your BCIC to FKCCI to FICCI to CII, they all have educational research units and they would be happy to contribute. So connect with the industry, various stakeholders, invite your community people and try to bring this feedback into defining of your PEOs. Now, the minute you are done with defining of your PEOs, it's very essential to understand what is it that we are expecting from our graduates at the time of graduation. That is your program outcomes. So we have to define the outcomes that we expect from our students. What is it that we expect them to know? What is it that they should be able to perform or attain by the time they graduate? If they are doing a 4-year program, at the end of the 4th year, what is it that they should be able to perform? What is it that they should know? If they are completing a BCom for 3 years, what is it that they should know? What is it that they should be able to perform in the organization or to set up a business? Now, these program outcomes again have to be aligned very closely with your graduate attributes. Going further in my future, if I have to live a good quality of life, personally, professionally, socially, then it is very essential there is a link between our program outcomes and our graduate attributes. Again, how do we do this? We have to start understanding the requirement in the industry. Across the globe, the very system of education is so different. You always work on your community requirement. If I'm based in California, I will look into my community requirement. If I am in Liverpool, I will look into my requirement in my community. If I am in Grimsby in UK, I will look into the port management, logistics, supply chain management requirement that my community has. And absolutely based on my community requirement, I offer programs in the institution. There comes the gap. That is where what we have to develop. We notice a huge gap. There is a lot of demand for e-commerce. There's demand for digital marketing, business analytics, data sciences. You will find there is dearth for people who can work in the space of actuarial sciences, risk management, fintech space, analytics, user experience. Now, these are the various areas where we can explore, integrate them into our programs and start building the required skills, give them the required knowledge, build the behavior for the society, for the industry, for leading a personal life. So here comes our program outcomes, which basically tell you what are the expectations in terms of your KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities, and how they have to progress. And we should always keep in mind the graduate attributes. A simple example of a program outcome: ability to analyze and communicate global, legal, and ethical aspects of business. Now, are we preparing our students to become global citizens? Are we building in that global intelligence among them? Are we preparing them to analyze, or just we are stopping with understanding? An important question to be answered. And there comes measuring of our course outcomes. Now, even before you can measure anything, it is very essential to define them. Now, how do you frame your course outcomes? Simple understanding. The minute I use the word course, it means I'm talking about the subject. Financial accounting, human resource management, strategic management. I'm talking about subjects. Now, what are those domain specific outcomes that I'm expecting from my students at the completion of the course? By the time I complete teaching human resources management course to my students, what is that I'm expecting them to learn? What is it that they should be able to demonstrate? Now, a number of times we use very ambiguous statements which are very generic, which are not clear. They have to be specific. When I'm designing the course outcome, when I'm defining them, it has to be very specific. I should be able to measure their learning. And how do I check? They have to demonstrate, they have to showcase that they have really understood the subject, they are able to apply it and able to reflect on it. And again, the course outcomes will help you in understanding whether you are focusing on the lower order skills or the higher order skills. It is our duty as faculty to move from the lower order skills to the higher order skills. Now, of course, the attainment of the course outcomes should always be connected or in sync with the program outcomes. A simple example of a CEO. Apply necessary critical thinking skills in order to apply using descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. We teach mean, median, mode, correlation, regression, structural equation modeling only in terms of solving the problems in the notebook. But if a child is given a question, a research question to be answered, and ask him, how do you measure satisfaction of employees? Which statistical tool would you use? The child would be looking at stars because they don't know how to apply the statistical tools what they have learned inside the class. Now here is where what the Bloom's taxonomy can come in handy for us. So we have the lower order skills and we have the higher order thinking skills. Now we have all along over the last so many decades been asking questions in the question paper. What do you mean by deflation? What do you understand by profit and loss statement? What is recruitment? What is job evaluation? We're just asking the lower order thinking questions to our students. We have to raise to the higher order thinking skills of applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating their own content, creating their own concepts, becoming innovative and creative in their thought process. And while defining your course outcomes and program outcomes, this Bloom's taxonomy has to be the basis. Whether you are saying to understand, to analyze, to evaluate, to apply, what order thinking skills are you using, the lower order or the higher order? And you can use a number of action verbs: analyze, classify, distinguish, explain, appraise, conclude, measure, evaluate. You can use a lot of action verbs while defining your course outcomes. And while designing your CO, PO, this Bloom's taxonomy can act as a basis for defining and using these action verbs. Now, the next aspect is about understanding how do we measure them. Okay, we have defined CO, PO, and PEO, but now how do you measure them? Simple answer. There are different universities, different institutions who measure the outcome on different ways. Now, I have tried to map it in a very simple and an easy way to measure the course outcome. The content of the course is one aspect, assessment evaluation is on the other hand. Starting from your alignment of your topics in the course, your course content, your class scheduling, your lesson planning, your pre-reading, the videos that you want to show them. What exactly is the pedagogy that you want to use inside the class? You want to bring in a caselet, a case study, a role play, a crossword, or you want to give flip charts, you want them to involve in some simulation, some board games. You can bring in a lot of innovativeness in your teaching pedagogy inside the classroom. Followed by, you can use various assessment strategies. You have assessments happening at two levels, internal, external. External examination, completely the job of university. But internal evaluation, you can again bring in project-based learning, tests, quiz. You can make children do role plays in order to evaluate, give them a movie analysis, give them a situational analysis, give them critical thinking questions, think and reflect questions. Try to make your assessment and evaluation in a completely different manner based on your Bloom's taxonomy. Don't give them last 3-year question papers to be answered as an assignment. Give them a project to go to a small finance bank. Ask them to go to Ujjivan and Equitas and understand how their transition has been from microfinancing to becoming a small finance bank, how their journey has been. So project-based learning, case study-based learning, experiential learning can be some of the tools for measuring your course outcome. How do we measure program outcomes then? Simple. We can measure the attainment at two levels, direct, indirect. When it is direct, simple. Average of course attainment has to be measured. I will show you how this mapping of matrix happens. So you will create a mapping of COs to POs, that is a direct attainment level, where you will consider the course content, your delivery, your teaching, and your assessment. Indirect attainment level, do a lot of surveys and collect feedback from different stakeholders. You have a company hiring your students, collect employer feedback. Your student is in final year BCom, 6th semester, leaving the institution now, collect a program exit survey or a student exit survey. Measure their contribution and activeness, participation in extracurricular, co-curricular activities in what way they have contributed. So direct attainment and indirect attainment levels can be the tools to measure POs. Now, this is how a typical mapping of POs, PEOs will happen to the mission statement. So you define all your mission statements and vision, your PEO statements, and then you start mapping them. So you will keep every program educational objective and you map it with every mission of your institution. Either it's a yes or the answer could be a no. So the correlation levels can be on 3 levels: low, medium, high. Mind you, a number of times there can be no correlation, which means no attainment. It means there is no sync happening between your PEO and your mission. So that is where you can go back and revisit what changes have to be made. Then we start mapping the CEOs and the POs, course outcome and program outcome. So you will define all your course outcomes, CO1, CO2, CO3, then with all your program outcomes. It is always advisable to keep it between 5 to 6 and not more than that. And the same aspect is followed even here. Course outcome number 1, whether it matches in achieving your program outcomes. Again, the answer could be a yes, no, it can be no attainment at all as well. Now, once you start mapping all this, there is always a loop which keeps continuing. And the concept of outcome-based education works on the PDCA cycle. Plan, do, check, and act. So first is you plan, you define your vision, mission, PEO, PO, CO, your GA is taken by the university. So you have all your outcomes defined. Then you start getting into action, teaching, learning, assessments, evaluation, curriculum is designed, everything is done. New pedagogies are used. After that, you want to check, am I moving in the right direction? Whether there's deviation, do I have to revisit where I'm going? Yes, there comes mapping of your course, program, and university levels of achievement. attainment levels have to be measured. That is your assessment. Then finally, wherever you would have found the gaps, where you feel that we have not attained, there is no sync between my PEO and my mission. My course outcome is not attained this year. It's very low. My program outcome in BBA has been low. Now that is a pickup point for all of us. Why? That is where you get to act in continuous improvement in terms of integrating it through the internal quality assurance cell, through the department head, through the principal and the faculty. You have to bring in these changes and integrate it. So there comes this corrective action and keep moving ahead. And this is a continuous cycle which happens after each and every semester in the institution. Now, this is where we have all arrived, which I call it as the world 4.0. Now, it's very difficult to push in everything about outcome-based education in about 45-50 minutes time. I thought this would be sufficient information for a small quick session of an FDP, and I didn't want to get into too much of the technical details in today's session. But definitely, you and me as faculty, we have all experienced this. We are in a completely different profession altogether. We are not like the IT professionals. We are not like the engineers. We are not like the pharma, the health industry. We are completely working in a different space altogether, with no promotions, no increments, and no spot awards, no recognitions. It's a very different profession where we work in. I personally would like to acknowledge all of you for the kind of commitment and the love for your profession that all of you have. I don't think with that commitment and with that love for this profession, any of you would have been there here today. A big salute to all of you, because there are a lot of things I understand that you sacrifice as a faculty. You see people becoming managers, general managers, vice presidents, AVPs and SVPs. And a number of times a teacher joins as a teacher and retires as a teacher. You don't get any awards or any kind of recognition except for maybe publishing a paper out of all your hard work. But our industry works on a different ecosystem altogether. And I personally feel when there is so much of work that has to be done in this entire system with a major role and contribution coming in from the faculty, I would like to appeal to all the management, the heads of institution, the deans, to extend a wholehearted support to the faculty. Only then, with a good, positive work environment, we will be able to implement outcome-based education. It is not as simple as it has been discussed here today in this session. Completely no. Because designing a pedagogy, measuring them, where you have to be objective, using different rubrics, right? You have to use certain scales for measurement. You have to define the scores. You have to define the parameters for measuring your assessments. It's not an easy thing to be done. So it requires a catalytic mindset. It needs an ethical compass, a harmonious strategy to navigate and sustain quality in the space of higher education. And I'm sure that all of you as faculty having this utmost commitment and involvement, all of you will be able to at least make a beginning with outcome-based education somewhere. And those of you who are already implementing it, you can move a step further and try to strengthen the system so that it becomes more and more effective and efficient. And in this journey, we are all working towards preparing our children, not just for a job, but we are preparing them for a life. So I understand how this journey will be inside the classroom, outside the classroom, with all the people in the system working with different mindsets, different backgrounds, diversity existing in our workplaces, but still the journey should go on. I would like to leave you in conclusion with a small thought, which is a Japanese concept called wabi-sabi, which says nothing lasts, nothing is finished, and nothing is perfect. So the journey is continuous. We have to keep moving in this evolutionary process, and I'm sure all of you will be able to give in your best in this journey and prepare all the children for a wonderful life in the future. Thank you so much for your patient hearing and your time. And I leave the floor open for questions and answers now.
Thank you, ma'am, for that very informative session. The session highlighted the importance of agility, the paradigm shift we are moving towards, the moral accountability of the teachers to create a holistic development of our children. I was very impressed when you were using the word children rather than our students. And the need for global outlook to create outcome-based education in our institutions. Thank you so much, ma'am. And now I request the audience to post your questions in the chat box so that ma'am can take up the questions. Ma'am, shall we start reading the questions, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yes. So our first question is from guest 100. He asked, with NEP wanting to give autonomy to many institutions, how do you think the aspect of OBE will be taken care? Will we have a common policy for OBE?
So the national education policy is a very welcoming policy, of course. Everybody will have a same kind of a policy to be followed. But as I already mentioned, in your class, you are the owner of your class. There is autonomy in terms of designing your curriculum, in terms of measuring your assessments and evaluation. So there is going to be no intervention from the policy in any of these aspects. So you can strengthen your system. The kind of pedagogy that you are using, instead of just writing the points on the board and explaining, you could convert that into an experiential activity. And there is nobody who is going to stop that. So NEP is bringing in changes at the structural level, bringing in autonomy so that the quality of education can improve and the higher order thinking skills can be integrated. So in your class, you are the owner of your class. You are teaching a particular subject. So it's completely up to you how you want to teach, what you want to teach, and what you expect your students to learn. So there you will have that complete autonomy in your class. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is by Professor Shailaja. Ma'am, really a very, very informative session. Being affiliated college, how do we actually get CO attainment?
Ma'am, as I already mentioned, you have two ways of measuring your course outcomes. Now, the one aspect will be about in your pedagogy itself, if you are using some innovative teaching method, you can bring in maybe sorry for the disturbance. So as I already mentioned, you have two options when it comes to measuring the course outcome. It can be through your evaluation and assessment systems. As I already mentioned, you might have a small viva voce examination that you're doing internally. You are giving a sudden quiz to your students. Let us say a board of governors meeting, or maybe a board of directors meeting, right? So you teach them about corporate governance. So you create a situation and you make these children enact in that particular activity. So all those children who participate, you will be able to understand if they have understood the concepts. So you have to consider, I'll give you a simple example. If you're doing your internal assessment, you give them a unit test, maybe 2 unit tests, you will consider the scores there. Number 3, you will give them an assignment. This assignment can be a case study, it can be a role play, it can be a quiz, it can be a movie analysis, anything of your choice. You will evaluate that. And mind you, you will have a question, how do I evaluate this? You need to use something called rubrics. That's nothing but on what aspects, on what criteria, let's say creativity, content, presentation. So you have to give weightage to all these criteria and start measuring them. So then comes your attendance, participation. When I say attendance, it's not just the physical presence, but the interaction made by the student in the class. All these aspects are considered. And I understand in a huge class of about 60 or 70, it is possible. I have experimented it personally. It is just that you got to prepare some group activities well in advance. You measure all these aspects, and that will be a part of your course outcome. I can also share, maybe once the session is over, I can share a copy of how I measure course outcome in my institution. So you can take your teaching, your pedagogy, and your assessment for measuring the course outcome.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is from Professor Archana. Hello, ma'am. Please give your input on how extension activities can be integrated with our curriculum.
So definitely, why not? Now, let's say you have NSS, NCC, Youth Red Cross, connected with community engagement, connected with environmental sustainability. You are actually building lot of important skills. I think no financial accounting and GST and taxation can teach us so many skills, from problem solving to crisis management to communication. The only problem is it can be an extracurricular, co-curricular, extension activities. The problem is we don't know how to define them. For instance, if a child takes up the role of a convener, if the child organizes the entire event, so you should have some scores for that. If a child is doing comparing, if a child is doing the back-end job, preparing some printouts, preparing templates for measuring, you can definitely take it into consideration. Somebody is maintaining discipline. Look at that. You are bringing in behavior, communication, crisis management, initiative. There will be fights among children, emotional intelligence. They will cry, they will fight, they will continue to work. Resilience, adversity quotient. Look at the kind of measurement that you could do. The problem in our country lies with measurement. We don't know how to create rubrics. We don't know how to consider parameters. Please consider parameters. You can integrate your extension activities. I hope I have answered your question, Archana ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is from Professor Madhu. When we desire to adopt OBE, we engage creatively with the students and feel happy at the result. But in the process, we miss out on the rigid time frame to complete the syllabus and fill in the huge quantity. We miss out on many deadlines. Is it the quantity or the quality that defines OBE?
I think the good news is NEP is there. NEP 2020 is going to really bring that change. There will be a lot of unburdening, especially with these timelines which you're talking about, which is a very common problem that all of us face as teachers. Sir, I think, very shortly, we will not have this problem. And again, another hint that I would like to give you, managing of your timelines. How you could do this is by creating a very tight lesson plan. As NEP says, light but tight. Your lesson planning should be like that, light but tight. How? Before even you kickstart your semester, you should have complete control over your lesson planning. You should know what is it that you're giving for pre-reading, what is it that you plan for your delivery of the classes, what pedagogy you are using, are you giving individual activities or group activities, how are you measuring, how much time you would need for this particular session, what caselets are you taking in, what critical thinking questions are you integrating, are you giving a spot quiz for this particular topic. Prepare everything well in advance, keep it very tight, and that will help you in not missing the deadlines. And just wait for a couple of years. I'm sure you will thoroughly enjoy it because the syllabus and the pressure on the curriculum will come down and there's more importance given to developing the higher order thinking skills of children in NEP. And the last question that you have asked is it quantity or quality? Both are required. It's very important that we strike a balance between both the quality and the quantitative metrics in OBE as well. The later life success of a child is equally important. And now if a child, runs out to be unemployed, I think as an educational institution, we are failing somewhere. They are our responsibility to tweak it. What went wrong? Attitudinal problems. He turns out to be a criminal. He turns out to be a very disturbed individual, has a disturbed family life. Are we not preparing him for a proper life? So we have to strike that balance between the heart and the mind. The skills on the soft skills as well as the hard skills. In fact, the soft skills are gone now. We call them as the power skills. So children have to be empowered with these power skills. So striking a balance in both is very important for OBE. I hope I have answered your question, Madhu.
The next question is from Dr. Nebula. She asked, how to keep a balance between higher order thinking skills and lower order thinking skills in classroom?
Very simple, doctor. Initially start with the lower order thinking skills when you're teaching them the concept. Now, once the concept is taught to them, then make them to think. For example, if you're teaching them about recruitment and selection in the classroom, so you will tell them the definition. This is what hiring means. This is what talent acquisition means. Give them the meaning, lower order thinking skills. Then share a news clip with them wherein it says Tata Consultancy Services is hiring 40,000 people, 40,000 freshers in the next 6 months' time. Give them that article. Use flipped classroom in the class. Share this. I'm sure all of you will have a WhatsApp group with your students. Post it there on the group. Ask children to reflect on it. You're building higher order thinking skill. Let's say you will teach a particular topic. Let's say a BCG matrix or a simple SWOT analysis is taught to them. So you will tell them meaning of strength, meaning of weaknesses, what do you mean by opportunities and threats. Lower order thinking skills. Ask them to write a SWOT analysis for ITC company. Higher order thinking skills. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is from Professor Jacinta Matthew. Is there any possibility of making the students self-reliant by recognizing their talents and letting it grow, like event management, service management, and so on?
Absolutely. That's where the role of a teacher as a mentor comes into the picture. All of us have to be mentors. So this mentoring will definitely help in nurturing the passion and interests of the child. They can definitely become self-reliant. And what you can do is maybe every semester, during the beginning of the semester, first and foremost, create awareness about the multiple possibilities which are available. The first problem is lack of awareness. Create awareness among children. What are the opportunities which are available in this entire world? Step 2, try to help them identify what their area of interest is. Step 3, mentor them to pursue their interest and passion. And I'm telling you, this has to be done again in a very structured format. You just tell them like a lecture. You are giving a lecture, they are listening and they are getting away with it. No, give them a task. Give them a deadline. Give them a template to write and bring it back to you. It will work. And definitely they will be able to pursue it, and you can also guide them in that direction.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is from Professor Shivakumar. According to your opinion, do you think after implementing the NEP, is our students are equipped to compete with students studying in developed countries? Is the accessibility to knowledge is uniform, and are our students stand better and competitive and reduce the knowledge gap?
So definitely yes. Irrespective of the child coming from rural, peri-urban or an urban area, all of us have that capability to achieve whatever we want. But I personally feel here the role of a teacher and educational institution is very, very important. How the education institution looks at the development of these children. Unless faculty capacity is built, I repeat, until and unless faculty capacity is developed, their knowledge is improved, unless they are empowered, reskilled, cross-skilled, this will remain a dream but not a reality. If it has to become a reality, faculty have to be empowered, faculty will have to be skilled, then automatically the knowledge gap will reduce. So how many of us are competent enough to teach big data or machine learning or artificial intelligence or blockchain in our finance classroom? There is a huge gap. Now we have to start bucking up. Now we have to start reskilling ourselves, and definitely yes, you can compete with anybody.
The next question is from Professor Balachandra Kamath. For subjects like income tax and business taxation, how can we integrate LOTs and HOTs?
So very simple. Let's say income tax. Okay, when you're teaching income tax, you're just telling them income from salary, income from house property, residential status, XYZ, all the technicalities you're going to teach them. Now, why don't you encourage your students to file the IT returns of your office staff or your fellow faculty? They would be paying 1,500, 2,000 rupees to an outsider to get the IT returns filed. Lower order thinking skills to higher order thinking skills. There will be a small company, maybe in Yeshwantpur or Electronic City, where they don't know about GST and maintaining. Create one opportunity for students to go there and do some paperwork for them, filing for them. Lower order thinking skills to higher order thinking skills. I hope I have answered the question.
Yes, ma'am. The next.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Professor Maya Matthew. Can we identify the advanced learners and slow learners with the measures which are taking for OBE, and can we guide them to their area of interest?
Sure. Ma'am, generally what I have noticed is institutions identify advanced and slow learners based on their previous marks. For example, if you're in your first year, if the child is in first year BCom, the pre-university marks are taken and they're categorized to advanced and slow learners. That's a very, very crude way of identifying advanced and slow learners. And personally, if you ask me, I somehow have a dislike towards the very word slow learner. I consider it as an improvement is required in a child. It has to be structured. It has to be done scientifically, first thing. Now, how do we do it? Now, there is rote learning in pre-university and 10th standard. A child who has scored 90% will score 60% in BCom because there's no repetition of whatever you've been reading again and again. Now, in this case, you can always go back. Whatever the child has learned during his pre-university days, the subjects, you can pick up certain basic questions, fundamental questions, prepare a diagnostic test, roll it out to children. You will get to know what is their basic foundational understanding. They will not know journal entries. You will teach them advanced financial management. They don't know what they are doing. That's why they can't apply what they are learning. So this kind of a diagnostic test will help in identifying slow and advanced learners. So that is the first thing. The second part of the question, what you are asking is how to guide them in their area of interest. You can do a psychometric test for them. There are a lot of psychometric tests available for free, and there are some vendors who do it for a small price as well. So a psychometric test will help you understand the interest of a child, where their passion lies. Or you can also roll out a personality test, maybe an MBTI or a Holland test, which will give you insight about a child's interest. Based on those scores, you can definitely guide the children in that space. I hope I have answered your question, Maya ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you have answered. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
And the next question is from Professor Mamta K. In this process of empowering our students with various life skills, our evaluation system has not changed much. We largely rely on testing memory. Students also gauge their ability through marks. How do we alter this?
The answer is again OBE. That is one of the answers. I don't say that's the only answer. There are different ways. And of course, that is the struggle being, that's like an internal struggle that all of us have been doing in order to change the system and empower our students. Ma'am, let me be brutally honest. It is not happening because as teachers, we don't know. I have seen so many teachers, today's MCOM graduate becomes a teacher tomorrow in a classroom. It's very painful to see this transition. I would suggest go to the industry, work for a few years, understand the nuances of teaching, and then come to the teaching, then come to the classroom. That is a huge gap. That's why we are not able to alter the system. See, for example, I don't know what happens in project management. I don't know what is agile in a project system. I don't know what is design thinking. I don't know what OKRs are. I don't know what are the terminologies which are used in business. As a faculty, I'm not equipped. I don't know what's a rubric. I don't know how to identify parameters. I don't know how to use Bloom's taxonomy. It should be more experiential. In fact, if I would have personally come to your campus, rather than doing a virtual session, I would have definitely not done a session like this. I would have made all of you write, think. It would have been completely activity based. I would have spoken very much minimum, and I would have made all the participants do a lot of work. So the answer is faculty empowerment. Faculty has to change. Then the students will change.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering all our questions.
My pleasure.
Ma'am, we have Professor Vittal with us. He was one of the resource person on one of these days. He has raised his hand. I request sir to say a few words here. Sir, you can unmute yourself and you can speak, sir. I think sir is not able to connect. So thank you so much, ma'am, for all these insights and information. It was a very information, and we are happy to have you here. Thank you so much, ma'am. Over to Evangeline, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So we would like to thank our speaker for the afternoon, and thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us with your wonderful presentation. It was very, very informative and very inspiring session on unboxing outcome-based education. Thank you once again. Integrated learning and the NEP 2020 has rendered insights on various aspects regarding the topics. Our minds have had the opportunity to be a part of these intellectual sessions from eminent personalities. Now we've come to the end of the FDP, and I request Professor Maya Matthew, IQAC Coordinator, St. Francis de Sales College, to propose the vote of thanks.
A very good evening to everyone. With the objective of understanding and learning more about the National Education Policy 2020, the IQAC and the Faculty Enrichment Committee of St. Francis de Sales College organized the 6-day Faculty Development Program on Integrated Learning and NEP 2020. This extensive program, we believe, have furnished the participants with the adequate knowledge to meet the challenges posed when implementing the NEP 2020 in our institutions. We are immensely happy with the positive response and feedback we received on all the 6 days of this FDP. I take this opportunity to thank everyone for the success. My sincere thanks to Dr. Bhargavi, Professor and Director, PG Department of Commerce, Seshadripuram College, Bangalore, for accepting our invitation and educating us on unboxing outcome-based education. We are indeed grateful to you, ma'am, for spending your valuable time with us. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
A special thanks to Dr. Vithal Pothar, the Day 3 resource person, for joining with us today. Thank you, sir. My heartfelt thanks to all the resource persons of the previous 5 days, Mr. Vivek, Dr. Sarajisha, and Mr. Nagarjun from KSCST for educating us on the nuances of IP. My sincere thanks to Dr. Bhargavi and Dr. Arulmani for engaging and edifying us on various aspects of NEP. Thank you, professors. A special note of thanks to Mr. Hemant Kumar, Executive Secretary, Karnataka State Council for Science and Technology, Bangalore, for accepting our invitation to be the chief guest on the first day. We are also happy to collaborate with the KSCST and start a new chapter by inaugurating the SFS KSCST Innovation and IP Cell in our college. My heartfelt thanks to our principal, Reverend Dr. Roy, for supporting us from the day we decided to organize this FDP. Thank you, Father. Our Vice Principal, Father Jijo Jose, is the backbone of this entire program, who providing us with valuable suggestions and feedback for its success. Thank you, Father. The IQAC team and the Faculty Enrichment Committee stood together in organizing this program, and Professor Archana made every attempt to get the best resource persons possible. My sincere thanks to the organizing team. I thank the host, moderators, and the MCs for guiding us through these sessions and the people who rendered the technical support as well. We are happy for the support and the interest that the participants showed on all these 6 days of FDP. Without you, our purpose would not have been served, and we express our sincere thanks to all the participants for attending this FDP and making it purposeful. Thank you. We will share the link of the recorded sessions in the WhatsApp group in the next week, and we will provide the certificates for the FDP in a week's time. I kindly request the participants to be patient, and we promise to provide the certificates within the mentioned time. We would like to collaborate with various organizations and institutions around the nation and connect with the like-minded people. You can mail us at IQAC@SFS College and to stay connected. Thank you all once again. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dear participants, kindly note the feedback link is posted in the chat box, and the same will be shared in the WhatsApp groups. Kindly fill it. If you want to be happy, set a goal that commands your thoughts, liberates your energy, and inspires your hope. We want to send best wishes for your future endeavors, and we thank each and every one of you for being a part of the 6-day FDP organized by the IQAC St. Francis de Sales College. Once again, we render our heartfelt gratitude and we wish you a great evening ahead. Thank you.